Place your hand gently near your ear again and notice the quiet more carefully this time. The hum that appears in silence has been described across cultures, not as a miracle, but as a byproduct of attention turning inward. Ancient contemplative traditions from the deserts of Egypt to the monasteries of early Christianity noticed that when external stimulus drops, the nervous system amplifies subtle internal signals. Modern neuroscience would say the brain reduces sensory input and increases gain, while ancient teachers described it as the soul noticing itself. The mechanism does not reduce the mystery, it grounds it. The counter-argument says it is only biology, but biology itself does not explain why meaning arises when attention deepens, why silence so often becomes a threshold rather than a void. What is happening beneath the surface is a shift from outward scanning to inward coherence. When the mind is constantly tracking noise, threat, and stimulation, subtle sensations are filtered out as irrelevant. Silence reverses that filter. The auditory system does not shut off, it recalibrates. Blood flow changes, neural firing synchronizes, and the body enters a state where internal rhythms become perceptible. Ancient language lacked words like neural oscillation or sensory gain, so teachers spoke of listening with the inner ear. Skeptics argue that attaching meaning to these sensations is projection, yet projection itself reveals longing. Humans do not merely register data, they seek orientation, and silence provides a canvas for that orientation to appear. When stories speak of hidden rooms and guarded manuscripts, history supports the tension between inner knowledge and institutional authority. Councils formed to unify belief systems often did so to preserve social cohesion, not necessarily to erase truth, but to prevent fragmentation. Parallel events happened in other traditions, such as Buddhist councils standardizing teachings or Confucian scholars editing texts to support order. The counter-argument claims suppression was always malicious, but the deeper view shows fear of chaos more than hatred of insight. Still, something was lost when personal experience was replaced with rigid interpretation, and that loss echoes in the modern hunger for direct meaning. There is a repeated historical pattern here. Whenever societies grow large and complex, they favor predictability over intimacy. Teachings that rely on direct experience are harder to regulate than written rules. Mystics across cultures were often tolerated when quiet and persecuted when influential. This does not make institutions evil by default, but it reveals a structural tension. Systems manage groups. Experience transforms individuals. The counter-argument insists that shared doctrine prevents abuse, and that is true. But doctrine without inner grounding becomes hollow, and experience without ethical structure becomes chaotic. The ancient struggle was not between truth and lies, but between depth and control. Breathing slowly and feeling the body anchors awareness in physiology. This is not mystical denial of the body but partnership with it. Ancient practices understood breath as the bridge between matter and awareness, what the Greeks called pneuma and the Hebrews called ruach. Both words meant breath, spirit, and life force simultaneously. The mechanism is simple. Slow breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, calming the body and allowing reflection. The counter-argument says calm does not equal truth, yet history shows that clarity rarely arises from panic or noise. Breath also serves as a regulator of attention. When breathing is shallow and rapid, thought fragments. When breathing slows, thought lengthens. This is measurable, not mystical. Heart rate variability increases, signaling adaptability. Ancient teachers observed this without instruments, and framed it as alignment with life. Critics argue that physiological calm can make people suggestible. That risk exists, which is why discernment matters. Calm is not surrender of reason, it is the restoration of choice. A quiet nervous system allows evaluation rather than reaction. The writings found in the desert used symbolic language to describe consciousness because direct description fails where experience begins. The universal source they spoke of resembles what philosophers later called the ground of being. Even modern physics struggles to describe unified fields without metaphor. Critics argue that ancient cosmologies are outdated, but parallels persist. Every era reaches for language to explain unity beneath diversity. The symbols change, the intuition remains. Symbolic cosmology functioned as a map, not a measurement. It organized experience rather than explaining mechanics. Today we use models and equations. Both are provisional. The counter-argument warns against mistaking maps for territory, and it is valid. Trouble begins when symbols are literalized or when equations are treated as final truth. The enduring value of these writings lies not in their cosmology but in their insistence that reality is deeper than surface appearance. Dividing humanity into categories was never meant as hierarchy but as observation, much like personality theory today. Some focus outward, some fluctuate between wonder and routine, some remain inwardly oriented. Psychological research mirrors this in traits like openness to experience. The counter-argument warns against elitism, and it is valid. The safeguard is humility. Awareness is not superiority, it is responsibility to remain compassionate toward those who experience the world differently. Historical parallels show how easily observation becomes identity politics. When categories harden, empathy dissolves. Ancient teachers often warned against this very trap. The point was readiness, not worth. Anyone could move between states depending on circumstance, trauma, or growth. Modern psychology supports this fluidity. People change as environments change. The danger lies not in noticing differences but in freezing them. When ancient teachers spoke of ears beyond ears, they were describing perception beyond reflex. Literalism misses the point, and pure metaphor dismisses the experience. The middle ground is phenomenology. What does it feel like to attend deeply? The hum becomes noticeable because attention sharpens. Critics say this is imagination, but imagination itself is a cognitive function that bridges sensation and meaning. The experience is real even if interpretations differ. Throughout history, artists, musicians, and scientists describe similar sensations during deep focus. A background tone, a pressure, a narrowing of distraction. These were not framed as supernatural gifts but as signs of immersion. The counter-argument insists that assigning spiritual meaning distracts from practical function. Yet meaning often enhances function. When experience feels purposeful, engagement deepens. This is not proof of metaphysics, but it is evidence of human motivation. Stories of rulers and false authorities reflect psychological dynamics more than literal beings. Systems that thrive on fear do exist, whether political, economic, or social. Fear narrows perception, which neuroscience confirms by showing how stress limits cognitive flexibility. The counter-argument says attributing control to external forces removes responsibility. The deeper teaching does the opposite. It shows how internal states determine vulnerability to manipulation. By personifying fear as rulers or forces, ancient texts externalized inner struggle. This made the invisible visible. Modern language speaks of conditioning, bias, and trauma. The function is the same: to recognize influence so it can be resisted. The counter-argument fears paranoia. That risk exists when metaphor is misunderstood. Properly held, the metaphor points inward first. Where am I operating from fear? Where does clarity return? Descriptions of frequencies and tones map onto stages of attention. Sudden awareness interrupts habit. Sustained calm supports insight. Pressure before change mirrors stress before growth, like muscles strengthening under resistance. Critics say this rebrands common sensations, and they are right. The power lies not in novelty but in interpretation. Meaning transforms sensation into guidance rather than distraction. Educational psychology shows similar stages. Insight often arrives as interruption, consolidation, and integration. The language of frequency provided a poetic shorthand. The counter-argument says poetry obscures rigor. Yet poetry preserves memory. These descriptions endured because they resonated, not because they were precise. Placing a hand on the head or heart is a grounding gesture used across cultures. It increases interoceptive awareness, helping the brain integrate sensation. The counter-argument warns against ritual without understanding. That is why recognition matters. The gesture is not magic. It is a reminder to inhabit the body consciously. Rituals become dangerous only when divorced from reflection. When understood as embodied cues, they enhance learning. Athletes use similar anchors. Musicians do the same. The ancient difference was symbolic framing. The mechanism remains human. Recognition as identity shift aligns with psychological reframing. You are not rejecting the human experience but contextualizing it. Engagement trains attention instead of avoidance. Declaration replaces passive hoping with intentional alignment. Critics fear this encourages delusion, but healthy practice balances inner affirmation with external responsibility. One does not deny reality. One meets it with clarity. Cognitive behavioral approaches show that identity statements shape behavior. Declaring awareness is not claiming special status. It is setting orientation. The counter-argument warns against narcissism. The antidote is service. Awareness that does not increase compassion is incomplete. Changes in temperature, emotion, and perception are common during relaxation and focus. Tears release stored tension. Colors appear vivid when attention heightens. Synchronicities increase because awareness notices patterns previously ignored. The counter-argument says coincidence is confirmation bias, and that is true. Yet noticing patterns can still inspire intentional living, which improves outcomes regardless of metaphysics. Research on placebo shows that expectation alters experience. This does not make experience false. It shows mind-body integration. The danger is overinterpretation. The value is engagement. When people feel connected, they act with purpose. Resistance arising as doubt is well documented in habit change. The brain prefers the familiar. Observing thoughts without fighting them aligns with modern mindfulness practices. The counter-argument says this avoids critical thinking. The balance is discernment. Reflection without blind belief. Private teaching has always existed alongside public instruction. From mystery schools to mentorship, depth often requires readiness. Critics see secrecy as manipulation. The deeper view sees pacing. Not all knowledge harms, but not all timing heals. When silence comes to night, listening is enough. Not forcing meaning, not rejecting sensation. Carrying awareness into daily life is the real integration. You are not separate from the world. You are participating more fully in it. If resonance arose, let it translate into patience, kindness, and grounded curiosity. That is the true signal that has always been transmitting.